Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to the Azure track of the MCT West Africa Cloud Bootcamp 2021. Wow, it's amazing to have you all here with us. It's going to be an amazing track today. We have amazing speakers, we have amazing sessions, and you're in for a wonderful learning experience. Before going further, just to remind you that you stand a chance of winning amazing prizes, including an Xbox, if you complete the session evaluations at the end of each session. And the way that it works is that the more evaluations that you complete after each session, the more you stand a chance of winning the prizes. Also, if you're yet to, please make sure you check out our website, mctwestafrica.com. So, special thanks to our sponsors that made this event possible. And without them, we won't be able to have this amazing event. So here is the agenda that we have for today. We have amazing sessions, starting with Mr. Deji Folarin and Olanrewaju Oyinboke. And then we have other sessions on Bicep, on GitHub Codespaces, and on .NET for you. So quick information about me. My name is David Okeyode. I'm the EMEA Chief Technology Officer for Azure Cloud at Palo Alto Networks, which is a security company. So I've also published like different books on Azure, especially in the security area. So check out my books and also check out my blog. But enough about that. We have an amazing set of speakers here for you. So first we have Ayodeji Folarin, who is a Microsoft most valuable professional and also a Microsoft certified trainer. And one of the things I'll tell you about Ayodeji is that he's passionate about teaching. He's passionate about passing on knowledge, and he's passionate about seeing technology grow in Africa and bringing up the next generation of technologists. And same, we have Olanrewaju Oyinboke, who is also an amazing trainer. He's an MVP in the data technology area, right? It's also very, very vast in Power Platform. And we're glad to have these amazing speakers here today. Hello, how are you doing, Olanrewaju and Deji?
I'm fine, thank you.
I'm doing
Awesome.
quite well, and I'm excited to be here too.
Well,
I hope my cap will recognize
I
that.
told you earlier, if I see you with that cab, I'll hijack it. You're not going back with that cab. Okay. So what do you have for us today? So what's the session about today? And then I'll hand over and let you carry on with your session.
Okay, so today we're actually looking at HR metrics and analytics. It is a strategic tool for HR or people leader. Now, there have been challenges looking at HR managing the department, and if the number is growing, the challenge keeps increasing. Today, we want to see how we can measure, track the performance of HR, track the performance of the organization as related to HR, and also look at better way to automate the process. So, and I trust Ola is a genius when it gets to automating process. It's going to show us a lot of things around that. So we are
Awesome.
good to.
Yeah, so I'll just let you carry on with it. I'll go in the background. So to our audience, if you have any questions for our speakers, put your questions in the chat window and we will be reading them out to our speakers at the end. So all the best, Deji and Ola.
Yeah, thank you very much. So Ola, how are you doing today? Are we good?
I'm doing quite well. How about
Okay.
you?
So I'm very, very much okay, and we are good to go. Over to you, Ola.
All right. So, you gave a very nice introduction about what we're going to cover in this session, and I would like you to maybe sort of explain again what are the things that you believe we're going to cover for your session, or that has been the major pain points you have identified within the HR space.
Great. Well, one of the major issue within the HR space has been ability to measure. Most people in HR, they thought HR is just more like let's just manage those people, but there is need to bring the science into HR. That is introducing analytics into HR. Let's measure what we do. And most HR leaders, they always have problem reporting to the management what the achievement is like. And the only way they can actually report to the management the achievement is to measure. When you measure, then you can actually analyze, and you can actually see if there is a major shift, and also you can actually take decision that will impact positively on the organization. So that is one major thing I've observed, and let's see how to get this done.
Yeah, thank you. So it's very important to measure what matters. You have spoken about that problem definition very clear. There are challenges of managing people. There are challenges of measuring the impact of your work and even how the organization evolved. So now that you speak to analytics and KPI, how will you advise, or what are the samples of work and project you believe HR enthusiasts or people already in this space today can leverage on to better
Oh,
serve their their employees?
lots and lots. Well, let me switch over to my screen, and I have this Excel workbook. I strongly believe we can see the Excel workbook at the moment.
Yeah, it's visible here.
Now, what I'm showing to you at the moment is a typical workbook that HR department always keep. They have track. Sometimes you ask HR department, do you have record? They will tell you, no, we don't have database, but we have Excel. You have database. Excel itself is a wonderful tool to keep track of activity. Now, they keep information about the staff, as you can see, their date of birth, the day they are hired, so many detailed information, even up to the annual pay, as I agree, the location of the staff. You track the training. Which staff did you send for training? How much did you pay for the training? How many hours is that training? We keep attendance of staff. When did they come to office this month? How many hours? We have all these details. We keep information about their appraisal, the performance, the rating. We even look at the type of job they do. Are they permanent staff, and so on and so forth? All this information sit on Excel or sit on the company database. So the challenge now is this: how can they measure things like this? How
I was
can
about
they?
asking you that question, Deji. So you are throwing the question to us. Yes, they have this data. So maybe I should be the one to say that how can they, make insight from this or measure?
Beautiful. Now, there are lots of things HR can actually measure. We have lots. One of them, I want to measure the return on human capital investments. So I think I have a slide showing me some of the things around HR metrics, analytics, and also people performance. So we are looking at what HR metrics analytics is. But I want to tell you, most HR people, they know about this, but they are scared of the calculation or the science behind it. But I tell you, it's something interesting using a powerful tool like Microsoft Power BI. And there is a process to get this done. Now, understanding the organization
Can
business
you put
goal.
your slide on presentation mode so that I'm
Okay,
enjoying
I
these
think
things and I don't want to miss any line.
yeah, so thanks. So look at what we have here. Now, understanding the organization business goal, identifying the metrics to be analyzed to achieve those goals. Number three, collecting and analyzing the relevant data that will help you address those goals. Like the data I showed to you, we've been collecting a lot of data time past. How do we turn this into insight and analytics? Number four, obtaining insights into this data we're talking about. And finally, communicating how this data impact on the organization. So, and we have a lot of things to measure. As I said, we can measure return on human capital investment. We can measure things like revenue per employee. We can measure offer acceptance rates. Are they accepting your offer? You can measure training expense per employee, training effect. There are
Sorry
lots
for
and lots of things that can.
interrupting, Deji. Sorry for interrupting. If
Yes,
you go back to that slide, that looks more or less like the KPIs that we talked about, right?
exactly.
Okay,
So
so
those are
a
the
lot of people are
KPI.
struggling. What do I measure? Which is the question. And then, if time permits, I would have like you to show that screen again so that they see there are various things, that you can measure even
Okay.
as HR personnel or
Let me
even an
throw up my
enthusiast.
screen again. I hope you can still see the screen.
I can't see right now, but hopefully, it will be
Okay.
projected shortly.
Okay. So these are things that most HR organization, I mean, most HR department in an organization wants to measure. Demography.
Sorry, Mr.
performance.
Deji, sorry to interrupt. Just to mention that your screen is not being shared anymore. So if you share your
Yes.
screen in StreamYard, then I'll bring it live.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So, okay, let me do that again.
It's because of time. It's just for you to be able to just put it on there and then maybe for 10 seconds so that we can see it again. I don't want them to lose grasp of that valuable
Okay.
golden information that you have on that slide.
So,
Exactly.
so these are some about 12 of the things that can be measured. So if
Wow.
you go online, you will see over 60 metrics that can be measured. But we are applying the 80-20 rule. What are those things that you measure and will greatly impact on the organization? So
Awesome.
absenteeism, time to hire, time to fill, human capital risk, recruitment efficiency, turnover rates, we have the offer acceptance rate, and so many other things to be measured.
And so many. Yeah.
Things you can quickly measure. And using a tool like Power BI, sincerely, it will get your work up and running without wasting
Do you
time.
have anything like that you can show us so that we see how it looks like even in Power
Oh,
BI?
let me show you an example. I hope you can see my screen at the
Oh,
moment.
I can see beautiful visualizations. I don't know, maybe that's your screen, but this thing is beautiful.
Exactly. The Excel file I showed to you earlier, this very file, is
Yes.
actually what I turned to this.
Wow.
Is actually what I turned to this. Now, take a look. We are looking at any information. I can even go year by year. Let me see what happened this year. I can switch to another year. I can see my head count. I can see those that were terminated. I can see the ratio of male to female. I can
All
see the
this from
average
Excel. Are you sure these things are
from
coming from Excel?
same Excel file I showed to you.
Wow.
I just push
Wow.
them into a tool called Microsoft Power BI, and it's giving me a nice visual. A nice
Interesting.
visual. I want to see how my staff are scattered across the organization. I want to see the performance analysis. I want to see the reason why the performance of the organization is so low. This will quickly go into that same Excel file and analyze and tell me the reason why it is so low is age. Age has a great impact in the performance of staff. Now, things
I
like this, we don't measure it and we are not seeing this insight. So,
Wow.
Ola, I wish I can just continue on and on, but let me tell you.
Personally, I don't know. I'm sort of excited, seeing all these things that you're showing us. And it means there are a lot, within the HR space, especially HR analytics. Of course, if people want to know more about all these, any means to reach you, all resources out there that can help people.
Well, we have our Saturday meetup. Every Saturday we meet and we keep discussing things around analytics. And to be easy to connect with me, just go to any website, any browser, and type digifolarin.com. You will see my LinkedIn handle, Twitter handle, all my handle, you have them there. So once again, digifolarin.com will lead you there. So we can discuss, I can add you to that community of analysts in the country, and we keep discussing amazing things that can turn the nation around. So Ola, you've said so much about metrics and analytics. I know you have a lot to tell us around what's it called? You have a lot to tell us around process management.
Automation.
Sincerely, because that has been another big issue in the industry. When you talk about automation and process management in organization, Ola, can you share more light on this, please?
Oh, thank you, Deji. I'm happy because this thing is, more or less back and forth. You showed us something really great. And one thing that I have observed is that we have a lot of processes, and the global lockdown made it very obvious. When all of us were scattered to start working from home, it then comes to how do I still do what I used to do in the office, we should never notice that it was manual, because you can walk to someone's desk and drop the form, or you fill this form, walk to someone else, get approval. And when you start working from home, you couldn't do those things again. Employees' productivity, going back to that, your KPI started dropping, and then there is a huge room to automate many processes, even within the HR domain, a lot of activities in the HR sector. So I see manual processes as major challenges that HR people face, and then learning how to automate some of these things without giving them to developers, to do. It's a big win in this space.
Wow, thank you very much, Ola. But I have another question I would like to put across to you. You said many processes to be automated in that space. Can you mention some and one major bottleneck that you will be glad to show us to run us through the process? Mention some of those challenges and let's pick up one and dissect it.
Okay, interesting. So let's just start with this. Number one, things around checking. I mean, two types of checking now. Frequent checking. During that lockdown, productivity, for you to track productivity, don't wait till the end of the year appraisal. And the appraisal they often do by filling form. Yeah, in manual form and moving out. You have to do maybe more or less frequent checking, maybe on a monthly basis, get to know if that person is closer to their KPIs or their targets. That way you can be more proactive. So you can actually automate by using Microsoft Form and Power Automate to get the responses on a monthly basis and get their managers to approve or to appraise them. So that way you can provide more or less frequent feedback that can actually improve productivity. Another thing is things around birthday, work anniversary. People, there's a great reshuffle this year. According to Satya he said it, there's a great reshuffle. People are more concerned about why do I work and not more about what they do. So you need to become more human to your people, as to your employee, so that they really recognize you. It's only banks that send us happy birthday most of the time. Banks will send us happy birthday message every time. But some employees, you get to send them happy birthday via email, or you send them happy work anniversary, and some they don't even get celebrated in their work anniversary. And if they get
Wow.
to, this is manual. They have to do it manually. Someone will have to be checking the calendar every day. Whose birthday is it today, or whose work anniversary is it today? Let me send email. That process can be automated, and I'm willing to show more, on that.
Oh, great. So what you are telling me is that if our organization is having about 5,000 staff scattered across the globe, and I can monitor the time for confirmation of the staff, I can actually track their birthday, I can track those that are planning for retirement, and I can also plan their retirement process or program, and so many other things. So this can be done without stress.
Without stress. Without stress.
I am excited. Please just throw up your screen. Let me see what you have there. I'm excited.
Okay, so I'm sort of sharing my screen now to show something. I'm not sure if you can see my screen.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, so I'm on SharePoint site, which everyone, as far as you're on Microsoft 365 domain, you will have SharePoint as well. And what I just have here, assuming I'm an HR person, I have a table here that have few records. And what are the records? Title, which means my staff ID. I have the full name of the person, the employee email, the day of birth, and the month of birth. I don't need the year of birth because I just want to know the birthday. What determines birthday is more or less the month and the day, not even the year, except you're interested in how old the person is. And of course, the day and the year and the month the person joined, so that you can actually celebrate them on that day. Today, these are the few information I have. And it's easy to add more record in case there's a new employee. You can even automate what had the record here, or just click on new, then put those details here. That way you have been able to update this list. But on a daily basis, there's a Power Automate that can actually take this data, check, is there anyone whose birthday is today? If there is, okay, send the person automatically, maybe 8 a.m. in the morning, send that person happy birthday message, and even embed maybe a birthday design flyers and the rest there. That's actually awesome. To do that, I have a Power Automate flow here. And you can see it is very simple. Just 6 or less action cards will do this magic. And I don't have to write code. The recurrence flow here is saying that every day, I've set it that every day runs once every day. And what time? 10. I even put it as 10. I can set the hour, say maybe you want it to run at 8 o'clock. Easily, you can set maybe run every 8 a.m. in the morning. So this will keep running every 8 a.m. in the morning. And whenever you get triggered, go to that my SharePoint list, get every items there for anyone whose birthday is today. That is basically what I'm doing here. And after that, I've designed a flyer for my people. So just go and pick the birthday flyer, which is very beautiful flyer. Then in case you want to calculate some things, I just use this to convert the flyer content to something that can be displayed in email. Image, I don't want it to be attached as an attachment. I rather want it to be part of the content of the email. So I need to convert it to base64. And that's what I'm doing there. There is really no code here. And again, the last one here is just to check, to send emails to as many people as meet that criteria. As you can see, this is the content of the email. We're going to trigger it now and test and see how it looks. So, Deji, you see, it's really simple.
Email. This is amazing. I would like to see a copy of the mail. Please trigger it and let's see what's going on.
Awesome. So I'm going to click on test. I'm going to say manually because I want to test. Something is blocking my screen, but I still see run. So it's saving and test. And right now it's done saving. Okay, I'm clicking on run now. Okay, so run successfully. And because on my SharePoint list, I have changed a particular name, which is my name now. I changed my birthday to today. Day of birth is 26th and month of birth is 11. So which is November 26th. Right now, the flow is here. And I just got, yes, you can see happy birthday, Ola Charles. That is my name. And this is it right here. Dear Ola Charles. This is the design. Let me close this design that I have, which is a nice one. Happy birthday. I have to zoom down so that I can see this thing very well. But you can see happy birthday right here. May you grow and enjoy the best life offers in this new age. Best regards, your HR team. You can customize what the content will be. But the fact that you don't have to be the one sending this, it makes a lot of sense.
Beautiful. So as HR leader, HR manager, what you are telling me is I can actually set up this process and forget about the process.
Honestly.
Are you sure this process will not fail at any time?
Oh, okay. Let's put it this way. The Power BI, will it fail? The Teams you use, will it fail? The Outlook you use, will it fail? If those things are not failing, because Microsoft built everything on security and, more or less as trust. That way, you will know it will keep running. It's a Microsoft tool. It's not the regular thing, and it doesn't fail just like that.
Wow. Ola, let me stress you a little bit. If I want to make this process complex, I run a small company. My staff strength is not more than 5. And I needed this process to wish them happy birthday, 1. Can I also link it up to maybe a cake designer and maybe a dispatch rider? That look,
sure.
24 hours before the birthday, let the cake designer get ready, let the dispatch rider get ready. Early in the morning the next day, let them deliver the cake at a particular address. Can the process be much more complex? Can it solve things like that?
I love that, Deji. You are thinking exactly like HR that cares for people, the welfare aspect. Yes, the flow can do that, even though it's not customized there. But what that means is, and it doesn't have to be too logical. I'm going to have my trigger that check. Just the way this is checking for birthday, another one is checking for whenever the birthday is tomorrow. So it's checking for as many people whose birthday is tomorrow. And when you get those list of people, you already have your vendors. Then send email to them. For this case, for this person, what is the content that should be written? What is the name of the person? Do you want to specify the color? But if not, you can even set some conditions. If it's gender, maybe use pink and some, feminine colors. If it is male, that's if it's female. If it is male, just go with maybe other variant. You can actually set those automation as well, both for dispatch rider and cake designer, and even maybe gift shops.
Wow. So, Ola, that's a wonderful section. I will want you to demonstrate this process between two of us. Change one of those details to my birthday, connect to a gift shop, Uber rider, and they must deliver all those gifts, Ola.
Hey, give me the Uber rider, give me the cake, guys, and maybe you should pay them. Then you definitely get to them.
This is awesome. Sincerely, I appreciate this. Let's see whether we have any question for us. David, do you have any question for us on the chat?
Hello. I have some feedback with people saying this is amazing. This is awesome. Like the way you've really broken this down and you've made it really, really clear. I have a lot of people in the chat window. We have Bjorn saying this is a nice session. We have people asking, we have Fokwala saying this is an amazing session. But one of the questions that I have here is somebody saying, can they get access to your slides, Mr. Deji? Is one of the questions that we have.
Well, I should throw the question back to David. The slide is available. How would they get access to it?
Good question. So one of the things that I've actually done is I've put on the screen right now the Twitter handles of our speaker. So that's the Twitter handle of Olanrewaju-Oyinboke, and that's the Twitter handle for Ayodeji Folami. So should I just ask people to go follow you? And then if you need the slides, just request from Mr. Deji, and I'm sure you'll be able to connect you to the slides.
Cool. Please, if you're interested in any of the slide or sample data, let me know. I can just ship that to you straight away.
Awesome. There's another question here, and the other question is, it says, is MS Power BI is a part of Excel?
Oh, well, around 2015, Microsoft actually pulled out Power BI to stay on its own. But before 2015, since 2010 to 2015, or till date, Power BI was embedded into Microsoft Excel in around 2010, and it was a powerful tool, but most people were not really using it. Exactly. But today, we now have it as Power BI Desktop. So it's not on its own. So it's either you use the Power BI Desktop on its own, or you use the Power BI in Excel. So if you want to use it in Microsoft Excel, then you have to go and enable in add-in the 4 major functionality. That is the Power Query, Power Pivot, Power View, and Power Map. If those things are there, your Microsoft Excel is not just an Excel, it's a powerful machine. So that's it.
Yeah. So I have a final question here, right? And this is sort of like from my side. Sort of like so by the way, we have some other comments here. So we have Abdurrahman saying, do we need any programming experience in order to use this? I think that'll probably go to
no. Yeah. So Ola, talk about that, please.
I think that is the catch of this session, because it is low code, no code. Low code meaning the only thing you have to maybe write something like exec function. If you can write if function, that's the max you have to be writing. And no code means you can do a lot of things without even writing any code. Just drag and drop, like as if you are using PowerPoint to design things.
Yeah. And here's another interesting question that came in, I think, from Mr. Ola. It says, I'd like to ask Mr. Ola, if this process is set when there was internet, will it still work when there is no internet?
Yes, it's running on Power Automate server. So even when your system is down, you don't have to be there. No need to put anything on. It keeps running. Once you set it up with internet access, then it keeps running without internet, wherever you are, even when you are sleeping.
Awesome. That is amazing. I mean, just lots of amazing comments people going. This has been really, really useful. Thanks very much, Mr. Ayodeji Folami, and thanks very much, Mr. Olanrewaju-Oyinboke. Amazing session. So I think we'll let you go now. We'll let you go have like some nice amala and stuff. By the way, what are you planning to have for dinner tonight? If you want to key us in on that.
Just mentioned that amala and ewedu definitely.
Whoa, okay. now my mind is salivating. What about you, Olanrewaju? What are you having tonight?
Well, I'm hungry. I would rather do something that is fast for me. Eba will be good. Eba will
okay. Well, you can imagine Eba is fast, right? Like, that's the fast one, right?
That's the fast food.
Okay, awesome. Thanks very much for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. Okay, so see you next time. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye. Yeah, okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much for joining us. So, we do have another session that's coming up. And that will be in just a few minutes' time. And we have a session on Bicep, the evolution of Azure by Make. So Make will be delivering that. So we're going to go on a break now, and we're going to see you in a few minutes' time for talking about Bicep, which is an amazing topic area to cover. So see you in a few minutes.
Bicep.
Hello, 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 everyone. Hello, and welcome back to session number 2 of the Azure track. We have the MCT West Africa Cloud Bootcamp 2021 conference going on. So the next session, the topic is Bicep, the evolution of Azure HAM. And I'm looking forward to this one because Bicep is one of the hottest technology areas that's been announced by Microsoft in the year 2021. So I'm really looking forward to this one. But before we go ahead, and make sure that you complete the session evaluation at the end of each session for the chance of winning amazing prizes, including an Xbox. Also, make sure you share the website, mctwestafrica.com, with your friends, with your colleagues, and get them to join the session and also learn amazing things. So our next speaker is Meg, and Meg, correct me if I'm wrong, so Meg van der Gerg. I probably messed up your name, so apologies. That's not intentional. Let me bring Meg up. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, it's somewhat okay. It's basically, if we how we say it in Dutch, Mike van der Gaag.
Mike van der Gaag.
Yeah.
Was I closer then?
Yeah, you were kind of close. Yeah.
I'll get better. Yeah. So we
No
have
problem.
Mike, and Mike will be taking us through Bicep, the evolution of Azure HAM. So I'm looking forward to this one. So Mike, do you want to sort of give a brief introduction of yourself and also what we're going to be learning in this session?
Yeah, of course. I have an introduction slide as well. So
Okay. So let me go ahead and bring that to the screen, and
Yeah.
let's remove that. Awesome. Yep, got that.
So let me, if we go, basically my introduction. I'm Mike van der Gaag, a CTO at 350. We are a consultancy company in the Netherlands where we do a lot of Azure-related and cloud-related helping of our customers. I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer. Since this year, also a Microsoft MVP. And I'm the founder of the Dutch Cloud Meetup, a small meetup group we have in the Netherlands. And
Awesome.
we discuss all kind of cloud topics.
Awesome.
There as well.
Awesome. So Mike, I'm looking forward again to this session. I think it's going to be awesome. So ladies and gentlemen, remember to put your questions in the chat window, and we're going to read them out to Mike as we go through the session. So over to you.
Okay, great. So let me just skip back to this slide. Basically the title slide. Yeah, Bicep, the evolution of Azure ARM. First of all, everyone, thank you for joining the session. I think most of you may already know ARM, Azure Resource Manager, and basically the Azure Resource Manager templates. And basically we are going to discuss Bicep and how Bicep is the evolution for ARM or of ARM. It just depends on how you see it. As many of you may know, ARM is used to write your infrastructure as code. But what is really infrastructure as code? So if we go and look like what infrastructure as code is, basically infrastructure as code is the management of infrastructure in a descriptive model using version control to store files. So basically, if you redesign this statement, your infrastructure as code is just a file where you specify your infrastructure in a really descriptive kind of way so that it's really easy to read. And you can use that file and save it in, for example, your version control system like Azure DevOps, or maybe even GitHub, or any other version control system you have. So it's really a descriptive way of writing your infrastructure and using that descriptive model in deploying your infrastructure as well. So that's the good side about infrastructure as code. It's very easy for you to use and deploy it to specific environments. So if we look at why do we really need to use infrastructure as code? There are some points here already, and I think there are a lot more. I think these are the most important stuff to think about. It's basically because it will save you money if you use infrastructure as code. And that's because you are able to deliver stable environments very rapidly and very fast and really at scale as well. So for example, if you just need to deploy one VM, you are not going to manually deploy a VM. No, you can run your infrastructure as code and deploy it maybe 1,000 times if you would like. Next to that, it's like I already mentioned, is you can save it in version control, meaning that you also have some kind of versioning model over your infrastructure, where when you do it manually, you really do not have any kind of version control. By specifying it in a descriptive way, you have that version control and you can really manage the versions of your VMs you're deploying. Reusability, you can reuse everything you write in your infrastructure as code files, of course, and it's also repeatable. So the steps you make during your deployment can be repeated over time. So for example, if an infrastructure server is down, just repeat the deployment you already did to make sure that you fix all the errors there were. Next to that, you can also create resources according to strict rules. So for example, if you work for a very large enterprise that has a lot of strict rules that need to be configured on an Azure App Service or on Azure Front Door, for example, if you have to do that manually, that's a real hard task to do. And it will take you a lot of time as well. And also, if you have to do it the second time, my guess, and I think that's everyone's guess as well, the first time you do it this way, the second time you do it in a totally different way, and maybe you even forget rules. By specifying it in infrastructure as code, you remove the human errors. Because it's not bad, but every human makes some mistakes. By specifying it in infrastructure as code, you do not have those human errors. So no more configuration drift. You specify the configurations in your infrastructure so you can be deployed to every part of the road. So basically we say that Bicep is also the descriptive way of specifying your infrastructure for the Azure platform. And it's basically an evolution over ARM. But what really is ARM? So if we look at ARM, and ARM stands for Azure Resource Manager. So that's basically the Azure Resource Manager layer that Microsoft created on top of Azure to manage all your resources. So what you can see here in this picture is that you have tools like the CLI, PowerShell, C#, .NET SDKs, Rust clients, the Azure portal, and they all talk to the Azure Resource Manager to manage the resources that are in the platform. And they do that by communicating to specific resource providers. So for every different type of resource providers, resources, you have different type of providers. But all communication is going to the Azure Resource Manager. That's why we also have something called ARM templates, where you specify what your infrastructure is and how it should look like in the Azure platform. So an ARM template is sent to the Azure Resource Manager. The Azure Resource Manager interprets that template and deploys it on the Azure platform. So, and that's basically why Bicep is the evolution of ARM. Because if we look at what Bicep itself is, it's a domain-specific language, specifically built for handling one problem, just like we had with HTML, what's also a domain-specific language is. And it's a transparent abstraction over ARM. So basically everything you do with ARM can also be done with Bicep. And it now has a full compatibility with ARM itself as well. And Microsoft also supports the product. So basically everything you develop in Azure Bicep is also supported. And as you can see now, Bicep is still at a 1.40 version, I think, at this moment. So it's not a real 1.0 version, but it's fully supported already by Microsoft. And what you can see here in the image is basically you have Azure Bicep. From Azure Bicep, we construct something like an ARM template, and we deploy the ARM template. And later on in the presentation, I will show you how easy it is, but also what happens on the background, because Microsoft is making a lot of steps in the area of Bicep as well at the moment, where it's very easy to deploy just your Bicep file to the Azure Resource Manager. But why should you then use Bicep, of course? Maybe when you can already write your ARM files, why do you need to step over to Bicep? Bicep is really much simpler, and the syntax itself is also much simpler. Next to that, it's much easier to read. And the major problem I had with ARM templates is that ARM templates tend to get very big and very large. If you have a lot of resources, you get very large files. And then you can divide those files into sub-templates that you maybe deploy in an Azure storage, that you have to give a public endpoint so that your ARM template can use that during the deployment. Everything around that is made much easier in Bicep. So let me first give you a first example. So what you can see here now, and let me just make this a little bit bigger. Basically, I think everyone who sees this and everyone who knows ARM, he sees that this is an ARM template with just 2 parameters and 1 basic resource for a storage account. So it's a very basic and also a very easy template to see and to use as well. But if we move back and look at how that can look in Bicep, and basically we have the same set of items, same set of parameters, same set of resource, and we have a lot of descriptive text in this file as well that should not have been there as well, but it's there just to give you a small description. And what you can see here is that it does the exact same thing that you already saw in the other template. So we have a parameter called location. We have a parameter called account name for the storage account name. And next to that, we specify a resource. And we give that resource a reference name storage account. And that points to a specific Azure resource provider and a resource API version. Next to that, we see the name, location, kind, and the SKU. And then we have everything in place to deploy a storage account to ARM. But let's get back to the slides. So you already have seen how simpler it looks, but how to get started basically with Bicep. Basically, Bicep is just a tool that needs to be installed as well. This is basically an installation step you first had when you started with Bicep, when Bicep was very new. Today, Bicep is also included in PowerShell and in the Azure CLI. So if you use the newer versions of Azure PowerShell and the Azure CLI, you do not have to install these items anymore on the system, but you can directly use them from the PowerShell commands. But for example, if you really want a new version of Bicep, it's very easy to install it on its own and use the cmdlet on its own to make sure that you have the newest versions of Bicep, because Bicep is also changing. And I will show you that later on as well. Next to that, what's also an important part of writing Bicep and really making your templates very easy is the Bicep Visual Studio Code extension. The Bicep Visual Studio Code extension really gives you the ability to write Bicep files very fast and also to check specific settings in your Bicep file. So make sure if you start to also install the Bicep Visual Studio Code extension, because that's very needed as well. So let's go to the Bicep tooling. So the Bicep tooling is just an executable that you can run from the cmdlet or your PowerShell command window. And it basically has, from the new version, it has 4 tasks, but 2 of those tasks are the most important. Those are basically build and decompile. Later on in the presentation, I will get to the restore and publish functionality, but the build and decompile are the most important. Basically, with the Bicep build command, you build your ARM template, and with the decompile function, you have the option, if you already have a large set of ARM templates, to decompile an ARM template to a Bicep file. And later on, I will get back to the restore and publish. But first, let me just quickly show you how easy it is. So I have a template here called template.json in my decompile folder. So if I go to that decompile folder, let me decompile, and I can do a Bicep decompile, and then it's called template.json. So it's a very simple command. I can do decompile, Wait a few seconds, and I will see a file appearing in the editor, template.bicep. So basically what it does, it takes the ARM template and decompiles it to a Bicep file. So you can see this is already a very large ARM template with 344 lines. Let me check how large the Bicep is. I think the Bicep itself, when doing a decompile, is almost the same as well. So, but it really helps you getting started from moving from ARM to Bicep as well. And basically the other part around in doing a Bicep build is also very easy. So if you look at this Bicep template that contains some resource files, it's also just very easy. Let me just go 1, 2, and this is 0, 0, 1, and do a Bicep build.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, Mike. So do I have a quick point? So the text is really small. I'm not sure if it's possible to zoom. Yeah, so that's much better. Yeah. So the other thing is somebody did ask a question in the chat window. He said, could you differentiate between ham and bicep?
How does he mean that question? Because basically what Bicep and ARM is, Bicep is just a translation over ARM. So it depends what you like. If you really like to write ARM, yeah, just stick with ARM. But what you will see later on is that Bicep really makes your life much easier than it already is. Because ARM just tends to be very hard, where Bicep is very easy, especially when using the tooling as well.
Yeah, thank you.
So let me just zoom it out. And if I point that comment, I do a 001 Bicep build. It takes 2 seconds, and then you can see here that I have a 001 web-app.json file, because the build comment will basically build the ARM template. So I have now constructed from a Bicep template just an ARM template where I can scroll this file and just have an ARM template. So basically what Bicep does and what the main point of Bicep is basically that you have the ability to just construct an ARM template from your Bicep file. So if we move back to the slide. So I also already mentioned it, Azure CLI and PowerShell integration. That's from the new versions of the Azure CLI and Bicep. So then it's already included. And then it gives you also the option to directly deploy your Bicep files. What it does underneath is that when you supply a Bicep file to the deployment commands, it will construct the ARM template on the fly and then deploy that ARM template, because it still speaks to the Azure Resource Manager, and the Azure Resource Manager only talks ARM. So it needs to have an ARM template. So on the local system, this command will just construct an ARM template and then deploy the ARM template to the Azure platform. So the Bicep file itself, like I already showed you, contains the same set of items. So you have parameters, you have variables, you also have resources. You will have modules and you will have outputs. Outputs are basically the same as in ARM. So you have an output. Your ARM template needs to output something after it's deployed. Modules is really a new part where you can really define several sets of templates, where you have one main template that uses multiple modules. And that's basically the new way of template referencing in the Bicep way. So we will get further into that as well. What you can see as well is within the parameter sections, you already have the same components that you have in ARM. So you have a default value option where you can just specify a parameter, its name, its type, and then basically the default value of the parameter. You can also use the allowed values and the allowed attribute. You can also specify secure values, length constraints, a specific description, and also integer value constraints. Next to that, you also have metadata options where you can specify some specific descriptions you want. Another main part that's sometimes really forgotten with ARM itself is that ARM can be deployed on multiple levels within your Azure environment. So you can deploy ARM on a tenant scope, management group scope, subscription, and even on a resource group scope. So you really have 4 scopes. That's basically where scopes comes into Bicep. So basically, by default, an ARM a Bicep template is scoped at a subscription level. No, a resource group level, sorry. So it's by default scoped to a resource group level, and everything you specify in a template, in the Bicep template, is deployed on that resource group. But you have the ability to scope a Bicep file to a different scope by using the target scope option. So you can have a target scope tenant, you can have a target scope management group, target scope subscription, and a target scope resource group. After that, you can scope for example, your modules to a specific resource group, or you can also scope basically your resources to specific other resources. So for example, what you see here is that we have a storage account and we have a resource log that we scope to that storage account. So basically it's a parent-child relationship where we specify a log on a storage account. It's very good to know that the scoping is in and how that can be used. So I already mentioned Bicep modules, and basically Bicep modules is just a code for reuse. So, and it specifies a contract to other files. And what it's by default is, it's just a simple Bicep file. So if we move back to here, and let me open up a module. So for example, this is just a module, and this basically looks the same. Looks the same as a Bicep file. So basically, a Bicep file can be seen as a module as well. And for my specification, I created this as a module. What I try to use when creating my Bicep files, I try to create Bicep files per service, and then create a main Bicep file that just loads in all kinds of services as a module. So what you can see here is that I have a storage account that I can use as a module. And so for example, if we look at the 02 where we use the module, let me get the right one because that's a private repository. So what you can see here is I use the keyword module, then type storage because I want to reference this as storage account, and then I just do a reference to a Bicep file name. So you can see here that my Bicep module is saved in the .modules folder 001 storage account.bicep. What you can also see here is that I also have the same parameters. But let me also show you how easy it is to write up. So for example, if I want to specify a module, I just type module, I give it a name, storage test. I point it to a file. So you can already see that the extension itself is helping me. So for example, I'm on the 003 Linux VM. I specify the name, VM, and specify parameters. And it will also give me IntelliSense. So basically what I see here now is a list of parameters that I've specified in my module file. So it's giving me real IntelliSense over my own modules. So let me also show you how easy it is just to write up a resource itself. So if I type here resource, and let me just create path, single quotes, and it's not helping me today. That's fine. Oh, yeah, that's my mistake. I need to write it in a good way as well. So what you can see here is the extension is helping me, and it just shows me a list of all type of resources. So if I type here web, I can just choose the right component I want. So for example, that checks the site. It shows me the version numbers as well. I can type this, and I can also specify a name because I need to specify a name. But the good thing is what you can see here is that I have complete IntelliSense of every property I need to write. So you can see here that I need to specify location, depends on, extended location, identity, kind. But what you can also see here is that if I just scroll over the red line, I see the specified resource declaration is missing a following required property. So it also shows you what kind of properties you really need to supply to your resource for it to work as well. Where it was sometimes very hard when writing ARM templates, just forgetting properties and everything else, all the required properties are saved in your Bicep module, and you can really use them within your components. So, a good important thing to know as well is that modules are translated to ARM like a nested deployment. So they are specified in the new ARM template like a nested deployment. In the new version of Bicep, there's a new way of sharing your modules. So basically what you have seen me do on the examples is that I've used modules that were saved on my file system. So that's not a real good situation if you want to share modules with other team members, maybe different teams as well. So what now is the ability to have an external and shared modules in a way of sharing those into a specific location. So you have the option to deploy your modules or save your modules in an Azure Container Registry, or for example, as an Azure template spec. And what the good thing is about sharing those templates in that way, you also have role-based access control. So you have the ability to set specific read rights or contributor rights on those components. So if someone would like to use your ARM template, they should have read rights, your modules, they should have read rights on the place where you have saved the locations. And this is also where the two comments came in that I mentioned before, like the restore and publish. Basically, the restore and publish are two new functions in the Bicep executable, where the publish function deploys your Bicep file to your container registry, and the restore function is restoring the modules you reference in your Bicep file. Let me shortly demonstrate that as well. So what you can see here on this module section, I here have a module called storage external that has a specific reference. So this one is referencing one of my Azure Container Registries where I've saved the module storage account. And the good thing about this as well is that, so for example, if I just remove this account name parameter, I also have IntelliSense over my external modules. So the IntelliSense does not only work for your modules that you have locally on your system, no, it also works for your external modules, making it very easy for someone that's using your modules of knowing what kind of parameters they need to supply and also knowing what kind of output parameters there are. So what you can see here as well, for example, this one was Azure Container Registry. And I also have a sample here for Azure Template Specs. So basically, Azure Template Specs is a new ability in the Azure platform to save specific templates for specific resources. So for example, a VM deployment can be very easily be shared as a template spec that also contains role-based access control. And you can then use that as a module as well in Azure Bicep. What I also want to show you that really shows you how easy it is to use Bicep as well is basically this example where we have a module. I use a module for Linux VMs where I specify Linux VMs. And what you can see here is that I'm using a for loop. So for this Bicep, I have a parameter where I specify how much VMs I want. And then I just deploy those VMs by using a simple specifying of a for loop. So if I, for example, specify 5 VMs, it will deploy 5 VMs for me. And I can really use those parameters as well by using the I parameter. So let me jump to the last part. as we do not have much time left, basically the linter. In the Bicep tooling, they also build in a linter to really give you good points on things you need to address in your Bicep templates. So it can be the case in your Bicep templates that you are maybe using the wrong function. You should not use the concatenate function in templates as well. So they really try to help you at first in solving those problems as well. So if we move back to, so what you can see here, and for example, on this template as well, is you already see the red lines. You can still use the concat functions, but they say that string interpolation is much better. So that's also what this message says. So this message says use string interpolation instead of the concat function. Okay, I would really like to use that string interpolation. So we can also see it, for example, in the problems section of Visual Studio Code, but it also gives you the ability to very easily change it as well. So we have it now with multiple VMs. So we can also do this and use string interpolation, and it just replaces it on my Bicep file right away, making it very easy to just fix all the linter problems you have in your Bicep file. So some resources for everyone that would like to read up on Bicep or get started on Bicep as well. There's a Bicep GitHub repository where the tooling is built up, and we have a lot of examples. There's also a good documentation page on Microsoft where you can get started. You can also reach out to my personal repo. That basically contains all the demonstrations you've seen today. And there's also Bicep Playground that you can use to get started and just play around with Bicep.
Yeah.
So thank you for being at my session. So if you want to get in contact, these are my contact details. You can look at my website as well. You could also visit my GitHub repository where I have a lot of examples regarding Bicep and some other ARM tooling as well.
Yeah. That's awesome, Mike. Thanks very much for that. That's amazing. And actually, one of the questions that you're yet to answer that we have here, you just answered it right now. Because Isiano was asking, he says, can he get the codes that you're using? And I guess that he can get that in your GitHub repo that you shared earlier. Yeah.
It's totally public. So it's
awesome.
You can just download it from there. You can even fork it and maybe add some additions as well if you want.
Awesome. Thanks very much for that. And again, that's just a very, very interesting information around the latest templating solution from Microsoft for Azure on Bicep. And also thanks very much for sharing useful information with us on how we can get started with that. That was an amazing session. Thanks a lot for that. Okay, awesome. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you're learning a lot. That's a lot of useful information that we already have today. So what we're going to do is that we're going to go for another break. So when we come back from break, we're going to pick up and look at the topic, using the power of GitHub Codespaces to launch your productivity. So this is going to be amazing. GitHub Codespaces is one of the hottest technology areas in 2021. So, amazing developer productivity tool. And we're going to be looking at that. So we have an expert in the house that's going to be taking us through that. So, but in the meantime, let's go for a break, and then we're going to come back to pick up on the next topic. So see you in a few minutes. Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome back to the third session on the Azure track of the MCT West Africa Cloud Bootcamp 2021. Wow, we've had two amazing sessions already on data insight and on Bicep, the evolution of ARM. Now we're going to take that a step further, and the next topic is on using the power of GitHub Codespaces to launch your productivity. But before we move on, please ensure that you complete the session evaluation for the chance of winning amazing prizes, including an Xbox. So just go to the URL on the screen. We've also posted that in the chat window, and if you complete that, you stand the chance of winning amazing prizes. Also, please share our website and with your friends and your colleagues. Make sure you get them joining the sessions. Make sure that you're not selfish with the knowledge that you're learning. Make sure you share that around and make sure that everyone around you gets to learn the same thing that you're learning. Okay, so the next speaker that we have for you, we have Daniel Paulus. And Daniel is a Syria conference organizer. He's also a meetup runner. So he's a principal consultant at Bright Blue, which is a Microsoft Azure focused consultancy company, and also is a Microsoft Azure MVP. So we're glad to have Daniel with us today. Hello, Daniel. How are you doing?
Hey, good. Here it's evening, so I'm not sure what's with you, but
it's evening also. So like it's
okay.
like
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, awesome. And yeah, I mean, this is a very, very interesting technology area. Actually, the keynote speaker today made reference of GitHub Codespaces. So it seems as if it's one of the areas that's like really, really hot at the moment.
Yeah, and I hope that if I'm done with speaking, you all know why you have to use Codespaces. So I'm ready.
Awesome. So yeah, so I'll hand over to you, Daniel. So we'll take your screen live and over to you.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Great to be here. Thank you all for joining. Let's move. Yeah. Let's start with the presentation. So again, my name is Daniel Paulus. I am an Azure MVP, but I'm also a Kubernetes subject matter expert at Bright Blue, which basically means that I work with containers every day, and I help companies to adopt a cloud-native mindset. You can find me on Twitter as PaulusTM. I love to hear from you, so if you're watching, please send me a tweet. That's great. You can also find me on GitHub. So there you can find more on containers, on Codespaces, on whatever you'd like. So what we're going to talk about today. First, we're going to look at what is a developer workflow. And if we know what a workflow is, then what is a GitHub Codespace? How can that help me? Then we dive into a demo. So I will show you how it actually can make your workflow better. And then I show you how you can get it. And then we have hopefully time for questions. We have just 30 minutes, so I have to go speed run through this presentation, but I think you will get the hang of it. So what is a developer workflow? Every time that I join a new team or a new company to help the teams there, I am faced with the setup phase. I have to make sure that my laptop is able to run the solution that the team is building. This phase is usually the longest phase because I have to install the specific tooling, specific versions. If they use NPM, I have to download almost the entire internet in packages. And that all takes time. If I have done all of that, then I can finally start to contribute the feature that I love to build. When I'm done, I have to do testing, which is unit testing or integration testing, for which, again, I need specific tooling. If we're done, then, or if I'm done, then I can check with the team to see if there are if my changes are good enough. So I can check with a designer or what have you. If that's done, then I need to optimize. And then in the end, hopefully, we can deploy to production. This this workflow is time and time again. So take this, check it with your own workflow. I think it's almost the same. So what is this GitHub Codespaces thing? To make it as small as possible, it's an online IDE. It's simply VS Code in your web browser. It's hosted by GitHub, and it gives you the look and feel from your local VS Code. So it's a fully powered IDE. You have syntax highlighting, autocomplete, and debug tooling. It has all the plugins that you expect are also available in Codespaces. It has so it works from the repository. So every configuration that you like to share is included in Codespaces. And you can use this from anywhere. So I actually used Codespaces from an iPad in the train. As long as you have internet, you can use Codespaces. So let's not talk at slides. Let's just show you how that works. So this is my GitHub repo. And as you can see, it's a web application, a Vue web application with an API endpoint. And this is what we start to work on. Oh, I forgot to remove my workspace. So let's say that I am a new member to the team and I want to start to work on this application. I can simply, instead of the clone to my own laptop, I can say, go to Codespaces and create a new Codespace. As you can see, it's now building. This takes a moment. And let's read. Can I hide this? Yeah, I can hide it. All right. I think you all, or most of you, will know what they see. This is simply a VS Code editor in your browser. As you can see, we're on a default image. And there are some basic tools installed. So there is Python, there's Node.js, there's Docker, and there's a list that you can check if you like to know more. But let's dive in right away. And let's go to the API, because I want to change something to the API. So we're not, and to show you, it's a simple Azure Functions app. So in order to make sure that I have everything installed, I run npm install. Okay, so we now have everything ready to go. So let's run npm start. Oh no, we don't have everything. We're missing the Azure Functions runtime. So let's make sure that I install that as well. I copy paste this for easy access. And as you see, so this is the setup phase, right? I once again have to make sure that I have everything installed in order to run the application. But I'm installing this inside of the Codespace, and as you just saw, I'm using their bandwidth. So installing large amounts of data is quite faster than when I try this at home. Now let's run again. And as you can see, we can now start the application. And now the fun part is happening. As you can see on this notification, the application is now on port 7071. And as you can see here, it says it's on localhost, which is kind of strange because I'm using a cloud-based instance. So I would expect localhost to not work because that's my local machine, right? Well, they've made it in such a way that you can actually use localhost to go to your cloud instance and actually see the things that you expose on your local host. Because as you can see, we're now on the API catalog page, and we simply can see all the JSON that we expect. Well, how does this work? Here you see ports, and here we see what is exposed on that port. So there's the address where we just went to, and as you can also see, it's now on private. So I am the only one who can access this page. But we can set it to public. And then everyone from my team is able to authenticate with their GitHub account and visit my page. So if I want to make a prototype and I want to show something to the marketing team or whatever, I can simply hack it, expose it in the code space, and send the link on with chat to their department, and they can authenticate and see what is happening. Well, this is all fun and all, but we also have a view application. So let's move to the view app and repeat what we've just done. And as you can see, this is a lot more of packages to install, but it's also going quite fast because, once again, we're on the bandwidth of the cloud, which is way faster than my local home connection. Just give this a moment.
Yep. So sorry, Daniel. So while that is running, so one of the things that's been asked is that is it possible to zoom in a little bit? If
Oh,
possible,
sure.
Just make it a bit more
Sure.
legible. Yeah.
Is this better?
Awesome. I think that's better.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks very much for that.
Please let me know if there needs more zooming. So as you can see, we've just installed all those packages. And now let's make sure to show you something. There's another port that's being forwarded. And now we can simply go to yeah, the images are not working. It's a bug on my part, but as you can see, this is now actually reading the data from this API endpoint, and it's now showing that inside of a View app. But we're now done working in the cloud. You would really like to use VS Code to work some more. So let's go back to the repository. And now we're going to go to VS Code. Inside of VS Code, you can now say connect to Codespace. I'm going to check in the other screen if it's readable. And as you can see here, this is the Codespace that I've just launched. Do note that I am authenticated to GitHub. So they already know who I am. If you're not authenticated yet, they will ask you to authenticate in order to get all your Codespaces I simply click on the code space. Now we give it a moment. And once again, there's my application. So it didn't clone anything to my local disk. It's simply connected to the code space. And I can show you, is this big enough? Let me zoom in a bit. Hope that this is big enough. But as you can see, I am now inside of the code space. So I'm not running on my local system. This is all code spaces. So once again, I can go to the API, and I can, just to make sure, run npm install. It's doing nothing because it's already there. And now I can say npm start. Was it still running? This is always with live demos. I've just tested all of this. Nothing happened. Well, retry. Is that there is no. Go to here. We should be able to, well, go to what was the and here it is. It was already running. So as you can see now, because I'm on my laptop, I do use localhost 7071 to connect to the code space. This is done by a transparent port forward. So we go to localhost, but it makes a tunnel underwater to the endpoint from the code space. So we can also go to 8080. Oh. And we see our shop. However, we installed the function app or the function runtime in our container. And it would be great when next time that someone gets into the team, they don't have to do that. It would be great if it's all there. So in order to tune your code space, you can make use of something called a dev container. And a dev container is basically a Docker file and JSON specification in order for things that you would like to have installed already. So instead of using the default codespace image, we are going to use a dev container. And as you see, there are a lot of dev containers, even Salesforce. This is all community-based, so you can find all of these on GitHub. If you like one, you can make a PR to the repo, and the Microsoft team might be able to get your container part of all of these. We are going to use the Azure Functions with Node.js. And just to skim through it, it's a Docker file, and you can pre-add extensions. So in this case, I would like to have the Azure functions already installed. But if I like extra function or extra extensions that I like my entire team to use, I could put them here. And the Docker file is simply using the Azure Functions Node 3 tools. And we have the option to install extra things if we'd like to. But for now, this is fine. Terminal. We add the dev container. Right, and we now simply now we go back to GitHub. And as you see, we've now put the dev container in place. So let's go to our code space and delete the code space. And make a new one from the main branch. So it's now building the container, which will take a moment more, but we can view the logs and you can see exactly what it is doing. As you can see, it's pulling it in, and that's why it takes a little bit longer than the default image, because that's already pulled. Come on. Just a few moments. Come on, speed up. Okay, so we go back to the demo in a sec. But you can use this with your GitHub team or as a GitHub Enterprise customer. If you're not a team, then Codespaces doesn't yet work for you. You can use VS Code in the cloud by pressing the dot on your keyboard when you're inside of a repo. The only downside is you do not get compute with that offering. But it's quite handy to make quick changes. When you do have a team or are an enterprise customer, then you can choose the compute from 2 cores to 32 cores. As you can see, the RAM goes along with it. And then the price is in $ per hour. That's when it's running. So when you stop the code space, you will only pay the storage for the code space. It will go inactive. So when you're not using the code space, it will go inactive, I think, in half an hour. So you will not pay for unneeded code spaces. Let's go back to the demo. So we're once again here, making it bigger. API. So if all went well, we can now simply say npm start. And it automatically got the Azure Functions runtime inside of the container. So I don't need to install that anymore. It's simply there. So the next team member can simply run npm install, npm start without having to care anything about the version of the Azure runtime. And to show you, I can now simply once again go to. And here is once again the JSON. That was my presentation. Are there any questions?
Awesome. That was amazing. That was amazing, Daniel. So before we even go to like question from the audience, so audience, if you do have any questions for Daniel, please, now is your time to ask. I do have a quick question. So GitHub Codespaces is very interesting. It looks very interesting. But I remember I was looking online some weeks ago, and I saw this thing called vscode.dev, right? So where I could just go to a web browser and I could just get VS Code and I could just upload files directly from my system into that environment. Is this sort of like a similarity between these, like what's going on with, Codespaces GitHub.dev and VS Code.dev?
I think so. So I think it's the same. Only with the Codespaces, you get compute. So, I lost you. So if I go to my web browser once again here, and I go out of my Codespace, go to repository, and
so we can't see your screen anymore in case you're sharing. So we can't see your screen in StreamYard.
Sharing right away. This one.
No, the forums. Yep, I can see that. So now we can see your screen.
Okay. So let me go to a different repo. Let's go to the DevOps Days repo. This is quite a large repo, but only text. So if I now press dot on my keyboard, it goes to GitHub.dev and to the same repo. And now I'm in VS Code in my web browser.
Yeah.
The only difference now is I don't have compute. So I cannot build anything. I cannot install runtimes.
I see.
It's simply text-based work. But if there is an here, so if there is a PR, I can simply click on it and it will open up that PR and I can get a side-to-side view. So if you have a large repo with open source and people are sending in a PR, this is a great way to quickly see what's happening in an editor with syntax highlighting, with everything that you like, but not with compute.
Got it. Awesome. Yeah. And again, that's just very, very powerful. So at the moment, the next question would be, so the audience, I can see people asking, information about how they get started. How do people get started? Can anyone just go get started, or do they need to go through a process to get started?
Well, the thing is, you have to be in a GitHub team, in a paid plan.
Okay.
Or Teams is free up to 5 people, I think. But because you have to pay for this, they need to have your credit card details and stuff. So just as a single user, you cannot use Codespaces yet. I believe that will be coming in the future, especially if you all start asking for this, they might listen to you.
Got it.
I have access because of the beta that was going on. I still have that access, but I can lose the access because I'm not a team.
Oh, I see.
And I'm also not an enterprise user. So, but if you're a team or a startup with 5 or 6 people, you can just buy cheap hardware, cheap laptops, and use Codespaces for the compute. You don't need this fancy MacBook Pro anymore because you can here you can run with 32 cores, man. I don't have that in my laptop.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of difference. Like if you have like very powerful builds to do, that does make a lot of difference.
And your team doesn't hack on the software the entire day, right? So the Codespace can be on pause or stopped, and then you don't pay for the compute. You can do other work on your business laptop and then use the same business laptop to work on code again because the compute is in the cloud.
Yeah, that's so powerful.
So,
Sorry.
And that's especially for the big enterprises, which they all give standard laptops, right?
Yeah.
It's all standardized. And now you can have a team with a way more powerful code space, but on the same standard issue laptop without any problems.
Yeah. And it's essentially just opening up, this powerful productivity that in the past is only restricted to maybe organization with a lot of budgets to buy all this fancy, powerful compute. And this just opens that hub to really any developer that has that has GitHub team access, and then you can just sort of take advantage of this.
So there is one thing that you can start with, and that is use dev containers. You can use a dev container in your VS Code as well. So every project that you have, simply inject a dev container. Make sure that when a new member joins your team, they can simply in VS Code connect to dev container. They spin up the Docker image on their local workstation. And they simply can start working right off. They don't have to install anything on their local workstation because it's all in the dev container.
Nice.
And then if you're ready for the move to Codespaces, you already have all of that in place.
Yeah. Awesome. That's awesome. I think this is the final question that I'll be able to take in the interest of time. But Akimbo Sunday asked a question here. He says, is Codespace part of the interface or application for computing?
Because of the interface or application for computing. It's, I think you mean that it's part of, so it gives you compute, but it's part of GitHub. So it's not a standalone thing. It's part of GitHub, and it enables you to use the compute. So when I think about it, they already do builds in the containers, right, with GitHub Actions. And for those builds, they use hardware. But when that hardware is not doing anything, why not use it for Codespaces? So that might be the story behind it. I do not work for GitHub. I have no idea if that is the actual story, but that makes a lot of sense to me. This is just an offering that they can make because they have the hardware to back it up.
Awesome. Thanks very much for that again, Daniel. That was amazing. So again, if you're here to follow
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. It's a pleasure. And that's Daniel's Twitter handle. If you're here to follow Daniel, make sure you follow him. So that's the last the module on, or the session on GitHub Codespaces. I hope that you've learned some very useful information from there. So we're going to have the next session start at 7:05. So pay attention to that. We're going to start at 7:05, which means that'll be in about 8 minutes. And we have Frank Odom that will be talking to us on building modern web applications with .NET 5 and Azure. And I'm looking forward to this one because Frank is one of the active members and contributors and leaders in the .NET community in West Africa. So I'm really looking forward to this. But in the meantime, we're going to go for a break. So go get yourself a cup of tea, cup of water, cup of coffee, and we're going to come back to do the last module or the last session. So see you in a few minutes.
Bicep.
Hello, 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 and welcome again, everyone. So, welcome to the Azure track of the MCT West Africa Cloud Bootcamp 2021. And this is the final session of the day. Would you believe that? We've had amazing session. First of all, I'm talking about data insights with Ayodeji Folarin and Olamiwaju Imboke. Then talking about Bicep, and then talking about GitHub Codespaces in the last session. And now we're going to conclude that by looking at building modern web applications with one of the most popular contributors and leaders in the .NET community in West Africa, Mr. Frank Udom himself. But before we get to that, if you're yet to complete the session evaluation, please ensure you do so. And this is not a joke, right? So you really do stand a chance of winning an Xbox. And on the final day, draws will be made, and people will be winning Xboxes on the final day. So the more evaluations you complete after the session that you've attended, the more you stand a chance of winning. Ensure you do that. Also, please like this video if you're yet to do so. And also share this with your friends and your colleagues. Don't be selfish. Don't just learn by yourself. Share what you're learning with others. So the final speaker for today is Mr. Frank Udom himself. So Frank is a software consultant, and he has demonstrated experience of designing, developing, and managing continuous delivery of modern web, mobile, and cloud solutions. Mr. Frank Udom, how are you doing? You can see your mic is muted, so you can see you're saying something, but you can see your mic is muted.
I'm doing very well. How are you, David?
Yeah, doing awesome also. I mean, it's been a lot of information that we're learning, but you know, we've got to stay here. We've got to stay here because we still have one last thing to learn and to take away today. So what are you going to be sharing with us today, Frank?
Okay, so today we are just going to be looking at how to build modern web applications using .NET and Azure. So we'll just walk through the various web application flavors that .NET Core offers, and how to connect it with Azure, and how to what Azure also offers in terms of hosting our web applications and infrastructure support. So that's what we'll be doing today.
I'm looking forward to it. So over to you. So I'll go ahead and bring your screen live, and then we can just go ahead and kickstart the session. So over to you, sir.
Okay. So let me know if you see my slide.
So we can see your slide now. Yes. But it's not in presentation mode, but we can see your slide now.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay,
we can see that now.
So as David earlier said, my name is Frank, and I'm a software consultant, and I'm an MVP as well. We are going to look at building modern web applications using .NET and Azure. The focus of this course is mostly going to be on modern web applications. So usually when we talk about modern web applications, we'll look at what actually goes in and what are some of the current trends. Then we'll look at how to use the .NET stack to build such applications. So as a quick intro, we'll look at what .NET is. Then we'll look at the ASP.NET Core stack, what ASP.NET Core presents to us for building applications. Then we'll look at when to use which flavor, because I'm going to show at least about 3 or 4 popular different applications under the ASP.NET Core web stack. Then we are going to look at continuous CI/CD, continuous delivery, continuous integration. And we're also going to look at Docker support and how to go live finally with our application. So let's just look at what .NET is. As we speak now, .NET is at version 6, and the platform has now been unified. So what it means is that we have only one version of .NET that supports all these platforms. So currently you can use .NET to build cloud applications. You can use to build web apps, desktop apps, mobile gaming, IoT, AI, and there are a lot of tools that you can use in your .NET development. We'll be using Visual Studio Code in our demo, but there are other tools like Visual Studio for Mac and Visual Studio for Windows. So there's also a nice ecosystem around .NET. There's GitHub, there's Nugget for publishing, your libraries, etc. So now that .NET is a unified, it's more unified. It's also open source. If you want to check out the code, if you want to contribute to it, you can just go to GitHub. The repos are there. You can contribute to it. So one of the things that developers also need to know that .NET is an open source framework. So now it's made up of, we have our runtime and we have our compilers and languages. We are going to be focusing on using C#. And on top of that, there are common base libraries or APIs that make our work easy. So the SDK comes with various BCLs that you can call in your code, and that makes your work easier. So that's just a brief description of .NET if any of our users probably doesn't know what it is. Now, our focus is going to be on web applications. As you can see, we can use .NET to build a variety of applications, but our focus is going to be on web applications. So now looking at the current trend of web applications, we realize that most web applications would have to build, first of all, need to be very responsive. So for you to choose any web application framework, you need to consider responsiveness. You also need to look at sometimes single page applications. So we have what we call SPAs, which are single page applications. And in the .NET stack, we now have Blazor. So Blazor gives us an opportunity to build a single page like application using C#. So I'm going to do quick demos of all these and just let you see how they look like. And at the end of the day, you can make a decision on which one you want to use as a web developer. So we have if you are more into JavaScript, you can go, the ASP.NET stack allows you to build .NET Core applications using the JavaScript flavor. So you can use Angular or you can use React. If you are more of an Angular person, you can use Angular. If you're a React person, you can use React. So the .NET SDK supports building of JavaScript single page applications. And you can also build, if you are more inclined with C# and you don't want to have much to do with JavaScript, you can just go with Blazor. Blazor allows you to use C# to build interactive UI. So what you can do with JavaScript, you can also do with Blazor. Now, the good thing about Blazor is also interoperable with JavaScript. So meaning that you can call your JavaScript from C# and you can call your C# code from JavaScript, which is very, very cool. So ASP.NET Core presents us with all these flavors. We can also build a page-focused web UI with MVC. So that is also the traditional app. So if you are used to model view controller, you can do that as well using the using .NET 6 or any of the flavors of .NET. And you can also build RESTful APIs using .NET as well. So we'll go and take a look at some source codes and we'll do a quick demo just to see how Blazor apps look like and how one of the SPAs, I'll go for Angular, just to have a feel of how Angular looks like on the development side. And in choosing whether you want to go for the traditional app or the single page application of Blazor, this is a reference from Microsoft that helps you in your decision. So it depends on a couple of factors, or there are a couple of factors you want to consider. If your team is JavaScript or TypeScript friendly, then you might need more. When you go for single page applications, it's going to require more JavaScript. But traditional applications like web apps like MVC, because of Razor server-side rendering, you might not really need a lot of JavaScript. You can just use your Razor to do your server-side rendering. Blazor as well allows us to write C# and manipulate the DOM right through the browser using WebAssembly. So with WebAssembly, you don't need to write a lot of JavaScript since you can use C# to manipulate the DOM. So looking at support for browsers without scripting, Traditional web apps, we have the single page applications. You would need JavaScript to be turned on in your browser for single page applications because they are very, very JavaScript driven. And for traditional web app, as we said, JavaScript is minimal, so you can also use it even there as well. Then for Blazor, support for browsers without scripting, yeah, it can also work there as well because of the minimal JavaScript. Now we are looking at client-side behavior. With minimal client-side behavior, traditional web apps is well suited for that. And for single-page application, it might be an overkill. And for Blazor, as you can see, is very viable. Now, when you want to build rich, complex user interface, if you have any applications that have rich user interface requirements, it is well suited that you either go for a single page application or a Blazor app, because with Blazor app, we'll get to know that you can actually reuse components, you can do server-side rendering, etc. So if you have very complex user interface requirements, you don't go for the traditional web applications, but you can either go for the single page app or Blazor. Okay, so another thing we want to look at in terms of modern web apps, modern web development focuses on automating cloud deployment. So you can use Azure pipelines to deploy your web application. That's either using your Azure web app, or you can use containers, etc. So we'll see that in a quick demo. So we've seen that for modern web applications, we have talked about single page applications, which allow us to build complex front ends. We've also seen that automating deployment is also very important. Now, at the end of the day, we need to deploy our apps. So there's a lot of offerings in Azure that we can choose to deploy our apps. We can use containers, we can use VMs. There's now introduced the container apps as well. So you can also go for that, or you can use the app service which supports Docker, etc. So we are going to go into a quick demo, and we'll look at how all these pieces come together. So I'm going to switch to my IDE. Let me know if you see my IDE, please. Okay, yeah. So we are going to look at a couple of web frameworks. We've spoken about single page applications. We've spoken about Blazor. We've also spoken about traditional web apps. So I'm going to quickly show okay. So I'm going to quickly open an Angular SPA. So we see how that looks like, and we just go through the source code, we run it, the Angular application. So I'm quickly going to do that. Because Angular takes a while to build, what I've done is I've already scaffolded the project. So this is our Angular project. And as you can see, we have our client app and we have our controllers, right? So what .NET Core is doing for Angular apps is it has actually bundled our ASP.NET Core app with our Angular front end. So this is your JavaScript solution. One of the downsides of Angular is usually with the NPM modules, they are usually heavy files sometimes. So compiling might take a while, and also deploying usually might take a while. But with the ASP.NET Core Angular project, you have your client-side app and you have your controllers. So let me just open my terminal inside Visual Studio Code, and let's quickly take a look at how SPAs behave. So with single-page applications, you realize that unlike the traditional applications, we have only one index file. So this is where everything in your application, this is where all the other pages render, right? We have one index file and all the pages render. So that's why it makes it usually very quick to load. and usually have a better experience when you have SPAs. Another good thing about SPAs is you can have reusable components. So as you can see in the app folder, these are all components. So let me just quickly run this app, npm start. These are all components. So this is going to run. So let's do .NET run. This is going to run a default project that has a counter, right? A counter, and it has another application that allows you to easily fetch data. Okay, so we are going to run this. We are going to look at how it looks, how it functions. Then we are going to create a traditional web app, which is the MVC. We'll also look at what is different about MVC. Then we'll look at Blazor. So at the end of the day, we will be able to, okay. At the end of the day, we'll be able to know which one to go for depending on what we are building. So let me quickly go through the counter code. So with Angular, you have your angular.html. This is where your markup sits. And you have your components.ts. So as we said, with the JavaScript single page applications, they are usually TypeScript or JavaScript driven. So what happens here is that this contains your markup or how your application should look. And the TypeScript file usually contains how your application should function or what the interaction in your application is. Now, with single page applications, we have an advantage of what we call two-way binding. So with two-way binding, what you can do is you can easily fetch data
Yeah,
and bind
apologies
it
to interrupt,
to,
Frank. Sorry to interrupt.
yes,
Is it possible to zoom in a bit so the
okay,
text can
sure.
be a bit more visible?
So let me zoom in.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Is it better?
Yeah, I think that's a bit better now. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so just to go over it, we said that with single page applications, you have your index file, and you have your components, right? So your components render inside your index file, or your various pages render inside your index file, unlike traditional applications, which we'll see later on, where we have single pages having their own single responsibilities. So the advantages of SPAs is that you can reuse components. So a counter component like this can be reused in another page. Let me quickly cycle over to, let me try and run this again. Okay, so I need to change this to the client. The reason it's not running, I need to change this to the client app. So mind you, the Angular solutions are made up of both an Angular client app. So if you want to run the Angular client app, you need to change your directory to the client app. So that's what I just did. Then I think I can now do my npm start. Let's see if it runs. Okay, so as you can see, it's running. So whilst this is running, it's going to take just a couple of minutes. Let's cycle to Blazor. So I'm going to go back into my directory. I have a Blazor WebAssembly solution and a Blazor server solution. The difference between the Blazor WebAssembly solution and the server solution is the Blazor WebAssembly solution runs C# in the client side or in your browser using WebAssembly. So what it means is that you can write C# to manipulate the DOM without having to go to the server to fetch anything. So C# actually functions just like JavaScript in a Blazor WebAssembly project. Now we have a Blazor server project. The difference between the Blazor server project is with the Blazor server project, your code still runs on the server side instead of running in WebAssembly. But what the Microsoft team has done is, or what the .NET developers have done is, they use SignalR to update the code in real time. So I'm going to quickly run all these solutions, and we'll just make a couple of changes just to see what the differences are. Okay, so this is our SPA. What is it saying? Google. Okay, so let's say no for now. We don't need this. Okay, so our Angular, we are trying to run our Angular. Now this is our Blazor server solution. So let me start with the Blazor client solution. Yeah, so this is Blazor Wasm. So with Blazor Wasm, just like your Angular project, you also have only one index file. As we said, Blazor is also like a single page application, right? So we have only one index file whereby we are going to render all our pages in. Then we also have components. If you go to pages, every page you see with .razor page is a component. So you can reuse these pages in other pages as well. So we'll quickly go in and we are going to create a quick component and we'll look at how that can be reused. So with Blazor, what you also have your www root, which has your static files. So anything static can be put in this folder as well. And let's run our Blazor application. Let's see if we have our Angular app running. Okay, it's trying to create a proxy. So Angular takes just a little while. But let's run Blazor and let's see how fast it runs. So I'll say .NET run. So this is Blazor WebAssembly. So we are going to see C# running just like JavaScript. I can write JavaScript to manipulate the HTML without having to go to the server or do any server-side rendering. And we'll look at Blazor server application, which does a similar thing, only that it uses Signal R to update in real time, and it doesn't compile the C# on the client side. So at the end of the day, depending on what you want to do, if your web application is more data driven, you need to connect directly to database and all that, you can just go with the Blazor WebAssembly. Okay, so we have our Blazor WebAssembly running on a project, client-side project running over here. So I'm going to open this. It's loading. So Microsoft usually gives you a default project that has a counter. So this is my Blazor Wasm project, right? Meaning that this is running in WebAssembly. Now look at this. When I go to counter and I click me, it starts counting up. Now this is not JavaScript. This is not JavaScript. This is C#. Now let's take a look at the code. The way it's doing this is that C# is actually compiling in the browser using WebAssembly. Now let's look at the code. Let's go to the counter component. When we go to counter.razor, any file you see .razor is actually a component. So let's look at this. We have our p tag, if you are familiar with HTML, and we have a button that says click me. Now, when we click this button, what we are doing in Blazor is we are binding a click event to increment count, which is a function over here. And what increment count is doing, let me zoom in just a little bit more. Oh, where did my zoom go? Anyway, so it is binding on an onClick event to this function. And as you can see, this is C#. This is not JavaScript. This is C#. So what happens is that anytime this button is clicked, we are going to increment this static variable, this property or this variable by 1. And how is it changing the DOM? It is bound to the p tag using this. So at current count, it's actually this variable which is being bound to the p tag. And as soon as I click count, it increases it and it binds it again. So if you look at the, let's go back. So when I click this, it keeps increasing. So this is Blazor running, or this is C# running on the client side. Now let's go back and see if our Angular project is ready. So as you can see, Angular took a while to run. Now Angular is running on my port 441. So this is an Angular SPA project. Now when I come to counter, it's the same thing that is happening over here. When I click increment, you see the same increment happens. The only difference is that the logic behind this is JavaScript, and the logic behind this is C#. I mean, this is very beautiful. So you don't even need to know much JavaScript to build interactive front ends. I'm quickly going to modify. Let me quickly modify this code. So what we are going to do is let's create a component in our Blazor app quickly, and let's do something fun. So let's go to, this is our WASM. Okay, so I'm going to create a new component, and I'm going to call this shadow text. Okay, dot razor. Now all I want to do is I want to have a text box that anytime I type in a text box is going to manipulate the DOM. So the first thing I do when I create a .razor page is to put in my route. This is how you define a route. So I'm going to define my route as / let's say shadow. So anytime I go to / shadow, I want to get to this page. Now we want to do two things. We want to create an input tag, an HTML input tag. So this is an input tag. It's a very simple input tag, and we are going to create. We are going to have another p tag, and what we want to do is anytime you type in this input, we want to mirror it here. So it's going to behave like a shadow. So anything that goes here comes here. Now, the way we can easily do that is we need to create a variable, right, or a property. So in Blazor, this is how you write your C# code. So I'll open my code braces, and I want to create a property. I want to create a string property, and I'll call this input. I'll call this input. So this is my string property input. Let me make it normal. Okay, now this is my string property input. Now what I want to do is anytime somebody types in this text box, I want to bind the value of my input here. So let's see the way we can do that. I can use bind, and I can say bind is equal to, I want to bind this to input, and I want to also bind it to an event. Now, what event? Because this is a text box, I want to use on input. So what this means is that anytime somebody types anything in this text box, what I want to do is I want to pick this, I want to listen to this event, and I want to bind whatever is happening to this input variable. Okay, then another thing I want to do here is I want to show my inputs over here. So let's see if this works. It might work, it might probably not work. Let's see how it goes. So in your .NET web applications, as you've seen, because I've made changes to my code in Visual Studio Code, I have to save it, and as soon as I save it, I need to come and run this again. But the way you can prevent that is to use .NET Watch. So anytime you use .NET Watch, as soon as your code changes, is going to try and reflect that on your page rather than you having to rebuild or rerun the app. Okay, so .NET Watch has started. Blazor Wasm is going to run. Let's see if our code works. Okay, so we are at our index file. Let's go to counter. I created the route as what? Shadow. So when I go to shadow, we see our text box. Now realize that when we type, nothing is happening. So I probably have messed something up. So let me first see if I have any console errors. Let me check what my console errors says. Okay, so let's do this. So we want to bind our input on this event. Then when we type anything in, okay, I think we need to set okay, let's see, bind input input on input. What am I missing? Okay, let's see. Let me just make sure I have something in my p tag. So let's say this is my shadow text. Let me save this. So let's refresh. Okay, so it means my shadow text is actually there. So it means I have a problem somewhere, probably. Okay, so I have my input. I'm setting this bind here on input. Then our shadow text is this. Then all we are saying is we want to bind this to this. So why are we not sure? Okay, anyway, let me just quickly cycle to the SPA. Probably it will come back by then. So let's look at how it's happening in SPA. So with the Angular solution or the JavaScript solutions, one of the advantages we have is also data binding. So as we said earlier on, it's the same thing. When you come to your TypeScript file, which is in your app, your counter. Yes. When you come over here, what has happened is that as soon as you click a button, it's going to increment it. And the way it's doing it is by binding this event and using this two-way binding property for the counter to show. Okay. So let me just cycle also quickly back to our Blazor app. Just a second. Okay, let me run the Blazor Wasm and let's see what the difference over there is. There's a slight difference in the Wasm project. And we'll see how Signal R. Okay, so this is Blazor server. Where do we have it open? MCT. Yeah, this is Blazor server. So let's come here quickly and let's do .NET run.
Yeah. Hello, sir. Frank will need to round up in a bit in the interest of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So let me quickly show how. Let's just move to the Azure side of things. Now we said that Azure has a lot of ways of supporting our development environments and all. We are probably used to web applications and all that, but now what I want to do is we have this web app here. Let me just run this .NET run. Let's look at this web application, and we are going to this web application is hosted in a container. Now if you have Visual Studio Code and you want to do development for Docker, it is advisable that you get your Docker tools. It helps a lot. Then you also get your Docker tools. You make sure you have your Azure. You have your Azure tools as well. This is it. So when you go to the marketplace, you can quickly install your Azure extension. And what it does is it easily helps you connect to your services. So as you can see, I can easily connect to my services from here. So let's quickly look at how this is deployed in a container. So I'm going to run this application quickly. It's already running. Yep. So this application we have over here, currently I'm running it using .NET, but using .NET CLI, that is .NET Run. But I can also choose to run this in Docker. The way I can do that is first adding Docker support for my solution. When you add Docker support, it adds a Docker file to your project. And the way you can easily do that is you can hit your Control Tab and P, a Control Shift and P in your Visual Studio, and it gives you, if you have the Docker tools installed, you can get some of these shortcuts, or you can use the command. So if you want to add a Docker file to this, you can just say Docker file. So you get Docker file, Docker add file to workspace. Now this is going to add a Docker file to your workspace, but you also need to have Docker installed. So as you can see, if you don't have Docker installed, you might usually have a problem running this. Now, after you do that, you can easily build your project. You can build an image out of your project because you have a Docker file added and you have Docker installed. Now, when you have the Docker extension, you can quickly go to Docker and you can see the images that are in your Docker host. So this I've already created, and the way I did that was to just do Control Shift P and come to Docker build image. Anytime you do Docker build image, it's going to build your Docker image here. So you're going to have the latest one show up like this. Then you can just right click it and you can run the image. So when you run the image, right now, instead of using the .NET CLI to do .NET Run, I'm going to run my application as a Docker image. Now, when you run your application in containers, so as you can see, it's running now. So I can just click on this and I can open in browser. So the difference that this application is running in Docker, and you can push this to Azure. If you have a container registry, all you need to do is just right click this. Let me quickly just show the shortcut. You right click this and you can say push. Now, when you say push, it's going to ask you for your Azure subscriptions. Now, the reason I'm getting this is because I have my Azure extensions installed. So it makes it very easy for me to work from Visual Studio. So Visual Studio Code. So all I need to do is select one of my subscriptions, and it's going to show me my container registry. So before that, I should have created a container registry. Now I can push to my container registry. And when I push to my container registry, I have my Docker image file there. Now, lastly, before I round off, if you want to work with CI/CD, you can easily do that because with modern web applications, we want to automate our deployment, right? So I can push my code using Git to my Git repository, and I can to my Azure DevOps or GitHub, wherever, and I can use my pipelines to create a pipeline. Okay, that's going to automate this. So what happens is that anytime a code is pushed here, Docker, this is going to create a Docker image, build it, push it to my Docker registry, and publish it to my Azure web app. For this to be possible, you need to create an Azure web app, and you need to create an Azure web app that supports Docker. So just to round off, we've taken a look at what we can build with ASP.NET Core. We've looked at some of the flavors of the apps. We have the .NET Core web app. We have the JavaScript. We have Blazor. And we also seen we didn't take a look at the MVC yet, but also we've also looking at the decision in terms of you going for the traditional web app or a single page or a Blazor web app, the decisions you need to take. And we've also seen how we can quickly deploy this using CI/CD into Azure.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thanks very much for that, Frank. That was very, very informative. Thanks a lot for that. So I have one question here, and then we can close out the session for today. So there's a question that's coming from Isiano. He said, if I'm working in Azure, do I need to install Docker on my workstation or in Azure?
Do you need to install Docker where on your
my workstation or in Azure?
Yes, you need to have Docker on your workstation. So as you can see my screen, I have Docker installed. So if you don't have Docker installed, you cannot run the containers, because the containers you might want to build locally, and have a look at it before you deploy. So it is always good to have the Docker tools on your workstation as well. In Azure, all you need to do is depending on what you are deploying, what I've done is a web app. So you can choose a web app and use a Docker deployment. When you use a Docker deployment, it's going to ask you to point it to a container registry. Then you can deploy straight into Azure. So yes, you need it on your local machine as well.
Awesome. That's very, very useful. Thanks very much, Frank, for sharing that with us. So, ladies and gentlemen, that will be it for today. So we've had an amazing, amazing sessions today. So the event continues tomorrow. So at 10:40 a.m. West African time tomorrow, we're going to kickstart the Azure track again. So tomorrow we have sessions by Oluwatosin Anishere on identity authentication and access solution, by Sergey on offensive Azure security. We have a roundtable panel full of all kinds of celebrities and all-stars talking about moving from developers moving from students to career. So we have a lot of experienced people that will be sharing their experiences with you here. So we have 2 sessions in French for the Francophone speaking West African countries by Gaston and Ibrahima. We have an amazing session by Adnan on secure your Azure cloud and best practices from the field. And we have a final session on Azure Purview. So that will be it for today. So it's been a pleasure being your moderator today. So hopefully you got one of 2 things. So thanks very much. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a lovely evening. Bye, everyone.
Bye.